Leslie asks a question I think we've all asked. If God is with us always, why don't we always feel him? Well, the short answer is because it's a relationship. It's not mechanical. You flip on a light switch and there he is. Like every relationship, there are ebbs and flows. My marriage is going on 4 decades. And there are times when I can't stand being away from my wife, and other times, well, it ebbs and flows. That's natural, nothing to be worried about. And the longer you go in the same direction with the relationship, the less worrisome those seasons are where you don't feel the love. Okay, that's the relationship part of it. But in my experience in ministry, the number one reason people feel separated from God, and they always blame it on God, like God moved. Nope, you moved. Almost always, if there is a sin in your life that is unconfessed, that will put a barrier between you and the person you love. Now, don't assume that you're a sinner. Well, we're all sinners, but don't assume that you have a problem just because you don't feel God. In fact, the place where I find people wanting God's presence is in the desert. And you almost never feel God's presence when you're going through times of difficulty or struggle or pain. But every time, this is almost universal, every time you get out of the desert, you look back and you see God's fingerprints all over you. He was there all the time, even when you didn't feel his presence. So, very quickly, here are some things that I found help, even in a desert, to feel God. Number one, and this is most important, stay connected to a community of believers. Sometimes you feel the presence of God by osmosis with others. Number two, music. Not just corporate singing, although that's very, very powerful, but filling your playlist with thoughts of God that will crowd out other thoughts. You can't unthink a thought, but you can crowd a thought out and fill it in with the positive thoughts of God. The third thing I would say is nature. In nature, we see the fingerprints of God all over the place. His power, his majesty, beauty, even his wrath is seen in nature. But if you want to go from the fingerprints of God to the face of God, that only happens in Scripture. So make sure that you are in the Bible 4 days a week or more, reading on your own and listening to God. Because after all great relationships are based upon a two-way communication, not just you praying to God, but reading God's words to you in Scripture and listening to his Spirit in your heart.